How's everybody doing today? Welcome to a special live stream with OM System Ambassadors as my guest this evening. It's a great honor and privilege to have them here. And we're going to be talking about nature photography in general, but this thing called Kachu Fugetsu. And ironically, it's not a term that I was familiar with, even though I watched the OM System videos from a couple of years ago that talk specifically about this and how it's their compass and philosophy and everything that they do in their when they're designing their cameras and uh talking about photography and in their education. And so I wanted to bring everyone together today and sort of explore this a little deeper, because generally speaking, I'm kind of a gearhead, and I'm always thinking about frames per second and computational photography and things like that. But I really thought about it, and I go back and think about my own photography. I've actually been embracing this philosophy uh, almost the entire time since I've been doing photography, getting an appreciation for uh, nature and being part of nature and experience all of that. And I can give you several examples. If you guys know me, I've probably told these stories before. That I like just okay. I'll just keep it short. If you get a chance, look up water bugs. They're fascinating, and also dragonflies. Just go on YouTube and watch any kind of documentation or documentary on water bugs and dragonflies, and you'll just be amazed. These are the two most amazing creatures I've ever encountered in nature, and it's kind of stuck with me. And whenever I go out, I try and embrace and think about the things that I see in nature, uh, and how they've come to be, and how I'm a part of that, right? Because we belong in nature as much as everything else, and it's a very surreal experience. And being able to capture that with our cameras is really how I got into photography and or enjoyed photography, I should say, so much more, and also appreciate more of our surroundings. And I wanted to try and draw on the OM system ambassadors, their experience and their perspective on Kachu Fujitsu, and also to give us tips on uh, how to use our cameras to better capture these moments in our lives, really, in nature and in our lives, which really the same thing to me. Um, so without further ado, thank you everyone for being here, and we're going to have an open Q&A at the end. But let me go ahead and bring in. We'll start with Frank here, just so I can keep everything in order. Let's see, Frank, how are you?
I'm doing well, Robin. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, thanks. And Frank, you were on with us last time, so but for those people that might be new here or haven't don't know about you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Be my pleasure. So I am. I've been doing photography for a long time. I have an image of me that my grandfather took when I was 3 years old, taking a portrait of my younger brother. So I've been doing this for, I guess that amounts to about 15 years. I'm being sarcastic. It's been a lot longer than that, but
Yeah,
it's been a while. My area of focus is I do a lot in the philanthropic photojournalistic world. I do a lot in the architectural arena. I do commercial industrial buildings. But my true joy and love is in the nature and landscape arena. That's where I spend the majority of my time, and it's my happy place, and applicable to the definition at hand of what you were so eloquently describing. For me, it's a great harmony tool with respect to that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you and I are very familiar in terms of our sort of what we look for in our photography or the genres that we like. Architectural is a big one, but while I enjoy that probably is my favorite genre, I really do have the most peace when I'm doing nature photography because it's much more surreal and tranquil and all of that. Whereas architectural, you're always in the city, right? Making and there's just a lot of noise, and I can
It's
only take it for so long. But
it's
it's
a
great for the
complete
moments like,
opposite. Yeah, complete
yeah,
opposite. It's I can be having that one of those stressful days, and the minute I step foot into the woods or wherever I am in the landscape arena, it's like it all just kind of my shoulder, everything that the burdens that come off my shoulders, and it's my happy place. So I agree
yeah,
with you 100%.
great. Okay, thank you, Frank. Let's see. Let's bring in Steve. Um, Steve Morello is a new face for me and maybe many people here. But you're a very accomplished photographer, and I was wondering if if you could share with us a little bit about yourself. Let people know
Well,
who you are.
uh, thank you, Rob. And first of all, good evening, and good to see you. Um, yeah, I've been a freelance photographer and mostly for the editorial market for about 40 years. My background is uh, is in nature photography specifically, but more of a generalist because uh, my clients in the past, most of my career has been World Wildlife Fund, and before that, Geographic and the New York Times, but always dealing with nature and with an organization like World Wildlife Fund, I would be sent to various places, and it might be polar bears in the Arctic, it might be birds in Florida, it might be anything, any place. So I uh, was very diversified in my subject matter. Birds are certainly a favorite of mine. I love the challenge of birds, their various habitats, their behaviors, trying to come up with new ways of expressing how they live in the wild. So, yeah, that's who I.
Okay.
And now I'm the proprietor, the owner of Little River Photo Workshops.
Awesome, awesome, and I really look forward to drawing on your uh, experience as a bird photographer and applying this Kacho Fugetsu philosophy to that. Because I've been to everyone's Instagrams and looked at your the photos that you share, and everyone has been, your photos are epic. Okay, just awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Chris. Chris, how are you?
Good.
You're
Hi,
my
Rob. How are you?
Yep. Good, good. You were on with us last week, and we also met as well as Frank and some others at the last workshop, and uh, that was probably on a technical side the most productive part for me of the workshop that we did last time. But uh, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself, your specialty here, so people can kind of get an idea of what you're all about in your photography.
Yeah, sure. So I'm definitely classified as a macro photographer, more specifically, mostly photos of insects and spiders. I also like taking photos of other small creatures, maybe frogs, snakes, things like that. But when I'm home or in workshops, it's mostly insects and spiders. Of course, the techniques that I cover can be applied to any small things, but the photos that I'm making on my own are usually insects and spiders. And in particular, what would be considered true macro, right? Like if you've heard of that 1-to-1 ratio of true macro photography, or even greater. We have OM system lenses that let us magnify even beyond 1-to-1. Natively, we can go to 2-to-1 with the 90 macro, which looks like 4-to-1 on a 35 millimeter or full frame sensor camera. So kind of that high magnification, really intimate close up portraits, close up detail work of living subjects out in the wild.
Yeah, and again, your photography, your macro photography is really incredible, and it gave me a lot of inspiration. I got my first jumping spider
Saw
a
that.
few days after the workshop,
Yeah.
right in my own backyard. I was so excited. And a lot of the other photography and close-up photography that I did since then, I just applied exactly what you taught me at the workshop, and it's just so much easier. I now have a baseline, so to speak, to build on. Whereas
Good.
before it was always trial and error.
Yeah, I think when I started with photography and with macro in particular, I was not particularly technically sound. I didn't have the technical foundation of photography that maybe some of the others have or some of the people watching have. And I really tried to simplify it for myself. And even though I've gained more technical knowledge over the years and have come a long way, I guess, in that regard, I still try to teach it in a way where it's as simple as possible. And I think that people like yourself kind of appreciate that because you feel like, oh, this isn't as complex as maybe I thought, and I can really
Right.
get a lot out of this and make big strides quickly.
Yeah, it was definitely I took a lot of pictures I would have really struggled with without that basic, like I said, that baseline to start with. So I appreciate that, and I have some good questions for you today for the stream.
Okay.
So let's go to Tom. Hi, Tom. How are you? So Tom was with us on the last stream, and also I attended a workshop hosted by Tom, Lisa, Frank, and Chris. But for those that may not know you already, tell us a little bit about yourself and your photography. Oh, microphone. It's mute. There you go. Oh, you need to unmute it. Maybe I can do it. Oh, I can unmute it. How about now?
All right. No.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna just go to Lisa real quick.
Yeah, I think because Tom
There
and
we
I are
go.
sharing a mic, I think when you unmute me, then now Tom can talk. So
Okay. All right. Let's try Tom one more time. Sorry.
like conjoined twins.
There we go. So this is Tom and Lisa. They're partners in crime here. But we'll start with Tom again. For those that may not know you, tell us about yourself and your photography.
Well, I got my start. We're echoing again.
You got to mute yourself. Try that.
Well, it would be helpful if I muted myself, Rob.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I got my start years ago, and with outdoor photographer, and I always ask myself when they got these great photos, how did they get the photo? And I kept asking that repetitive question for every photo, and then I read the specs and I go out and buy the equipment, and I'm like, boy, this is more expensive hobby, but I love it. I like Frank and Steve and Chris and Lisa. This is my happy place. It's very therapeutic, and for anybody, it's the camera's taking me more places than I could ever imagine, and really cool places, weird places, fun places, and I get to look and see different things, and that's one of the advantages of our camera system is I get to use my brain, my experience, and in different times of the day, and really have a lot of fun with it. And all I could say is I'm having more fun nowadays than I ever have, and because I can go from birds to stars to computational photography, daylight light, composite, and all sorts of genres that I just enjoy. But then it's getting back home and having to edit is another problem, but that can be managed. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, and again, it is a testament to the OM Systems making cameras that allow us to really embrace the idea of Kachu Fujitsu
Yes.
and all of the things. And I appreciate now more doing a little research before the stream, uh, why the cameras do what they do. Because I've always been a gearhead and always thinking about the technical specs of things, but it's kind of in a bubble, right, compared to other specs from other systems. But when you put it together with this idea of Kachu Fujitsu, the features and the cameras and how they operate just have this cohesiveness now. It kind of makes more sense. The symbiosis between our cameras and the idea of nature and Kachu Fujitsu. So anyhow, I don't want to get too you know philosophical about things because it's not me, but uh I you know let me just bring Lisa on before I mess things up here. Lisa, how are you?
Hi, very good. Thank you for having us, Rob. It was
Yeah.
great being able to see you a couple of weekends ago and be out in the woods and be able to do all of this stuff in person. And we appreciate coming back on your channel. So, um, my feeling on Katsu Fugetsu was I had not heard of the term up until OM System introduced it as their philosophy. And when they did, I felt like I had a word for something I had felt like my entire life. From the time I can remember being sleeping in the Pinto, and my mother and I were getting up early to watch birds, to getting my camera and everything since then. It was this like kind of embracing nature and the stress relief from nature, the appreciation of the natural world. And now we have technologies like pro capture and frames per second and focus stacking that like what we see and what we feel, it's easier to capture it. So when they came out with it, I was like mind blown that there was a word to something I felt like I had been living for decades and just didn't have that term for it. So I think technically it is, like you said, kind of heady and this Japanese old philosophy and kind of means flower and bird and wind and moon. And you kind of think about it like, well, wait a minute, what is this? Is this, like you said, is it gear or is it philosophy? But I think most people who kind of appreciate nature love the fact that we can see all of these things while we're out with our cameras. In a busy world, it gives us a chance to kind of slow down and notice things. I mean, who would guess that a spider, and some people really don't like spiders, I know you're one of them, but when you look at their face, like they're so cute, right? Like who would guess that until you slow down with the camera and enable you to be able to do that? And so OM has kind of said like, we're so busy and we're so geared toward, technology and TikTok and texting and all the things that we have, that getting out in nature and this Katsu Fugetsu kind of allows us to kind of re-find ourselves in a way. So it really resonated with me. And I think Tom and I both said afterward when they kind of unveiled this philosophy a few years ago, like, wow, like this is cool. So when Steve said we should do a nature retreat and make this our theme, I was like, oh, that is perfect. It fits in with his awesome little river. It fits in with OM System. It fits in with the fact that we truly are like seeing the unseen and seeing things that you just never would see, whether it's birds, whether it's slowing down and looking at mosses and lichens, whether it is looking at insects. And we did convert some people who were insects to cool insects. I don't know if Cindy Roper is on here, but she was one like, I'm coming to your retreat, but I really don't like bugs. And now she photographs bugs. So it is something that sometimes that idea of slowing down and noticing things allows you to perhaps appreciate them differently than you did before. And I guess just to be curious about life, you were mentioning like water striders, like there's just so many things that when you start to think about them and learn about them. I mean, how can an osprey dive into water and catch that fish? Well, first of all, it has to have that nictating membrane that's a little special so that it can go in salt water. Then it also has to deal with refraction, right? Water, if the fish is here and it goes here, it's going to miss it. So it has to be able to, in its brain, I see it doing like calculations like a squirrel getting on your feeder to figure out, okay, I need to dive here to get the fish because even though I see it here, it's actually there. like that curiosity just carries us so far.
Absolutely. It's really nature is really amazing. Not just the wildlife, but the plant life, the foliage, everything. And I wanted to just talk briefly about my experience at the workshop that I went to a couple of weeks ago. And you know, a lot of people would think, given my history here on YouTube with Home Systems and Olympus cameras, uh, that it wouldn't be as productive for me as, say, somebody that's brand new to the system. And I learned so much in those 3 days, both directly and indirectly, because I was doing things I'd never done before, and I was trying things, and the things, seeing things through your eyes and shooting over your shoulder really made a huge difference. And those were sort of the more direct things that I learned during the workshop. And indirectly, when I was out there, particularly in the rain, you start experiencing conditions that uh, you wouldn't otherwise be exposed to because you're trying new things. And I never went out in the rain before, but we were out there, rain or shine, and it exposed me to workflow issues that I had, that I never had to think about before. So, even for someone like me, a workshop, you know, really is probably the best investment you can make in your photography. So I know you have several more workshops coming up throughout the year. I wanted to share with our viewers the one that you have coming in August, August 8th and through the 10th. And unfortunately, one more person that couldn't be here is Emily Talpin, which I'm sure a lot of viewers are familiar with. She'll be there as well as one of the instructors. But if you could tell us a little bit about the workshop coming up and the location, dates, all of that stuff.
Yeah, so the workshop, as you mentioned, is in August. It's August 8th through 10th. And we've kind of geared it to be out when the light is good. We're going to be getting up early in the morning. We will have some nap time or downtime in the middle of the day. And then we'll be kind of continuing into the evening. It is centered, as we mentioned, around this Kacho Fugetsu. So we're going to be thinking about computational technologies as kind of the wind aspect of it. Steve's going to be talking about birds and kind of getting people really, he's got 2 bird blinds. His property is just perfect for these retreats. It is really an immersive event. So the location is in Maine. Maine's a really big state. We are not going high up into Maine, and yet we're going to be on this wonderful location that he has created, this oasis for us. But some people think of Maine and they think, oh, wait a minute, like Baxter, Maine or Cutler, Maine is really far. We're actually so close to New Hampshire that a few of our participants actually stayed at a hotel in New Hampshire. We're just as close as the one that stayed in Maine. So it is not a long Maine drive for those of you that wonder, like Maine, Maine is a big state. But it's this idea that we're going to have multiple instructors and you get a chance to then be in a small group, and you're going to be with me and then with Steve and then with Tom and then, so forth, kind of rotating through the various instructors. So we have kind of the camaraderie of a larger group, but all of the learning is done with a very low instructor to student ratio. And we don't assume that, well, I told you this, so when you get to Chris's, like, you're going to know that. It's this idea that it's not like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You only get to ask that question once. You're going to be reinforcing the material that you're learning, both computationally and sometimes overlapping with certain topics, like perhaps focus stacking and focus bracketing, or the idea of backgrounds and composition is inherent in all of our sessions. But the intimacy of being involved with an instructor that really knows your camera and can kind of concentrate on one aspect or a couple of aspects on it really kind of makes it very unique. In our inaugural retreat that we did last September, we had most of the people saying like, wow, like this is so different than any other retreat that I've gone on. We're getting all the things that we got in workshops with other people, but we're getting it with people who really understand the computational technologies like inside and outside, and can think of also maybe ways differently to be able to use them as well. You don't necessarily think about high res mode for a bird or a frog, and yet, you know, Tom will kind of do that. We know Frank's amazing high res with landscapes, but do you think necessarily maybe of using a big lens with landscapes? And Frank indeed has showed us that we can do that. So not only just like how do you use it, but how can you use it in other sorts of ways as well?
Yeah, and a lot of the you also showed a lot of other accessories, camera accessories and gear that we can use together with the tools in the camera to, you know, do even more.
I think as you mentioned, a lot of people like gear, but then they feel like, all right, I bought this gear, now I'm going to like struggle through the learning curve and figure it out. But yet we have a way to jumpstart that learning curve and like get you to that point where you can be much more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Rob, can I add one thing to what Lisa said? The advantage is in this workshop, you will maximize your OM experience. Because some people may go with other photographers that are Nikon, Canon, but they don't know how to use the system. And when you do star trails, you do other things, you know, you may not be able to maximize it, you know, and they're using their system, but they cannot help you, you know. So this is a good opportunity to really, really immerse yourself, experience it, and, you know, some of the pitfalls, you know, that you may experience, but that's part of the learning curve. And you're with a group of people, and as they say in the psychiatric field, you know, you're smarter as a group than you are just as one person. You know, so and a shared experience, and it's really cool.
Right, and it's very dynamic because sometimes you can't do a particular kind of photography that you intended originally, but then you can easily switch to another mode or function and achieve, you know, a different kind of photography. So we were doing things, and you know, so there was a couple of things, right? We had a plan, and you walked us through the settings to get us started. Then you explained, you know, why we use these settings, and then we tried to apply them in the field, and you know, you would demonstrate, and then we would follow along, etc. But yeah, workshops are extremely beneficial, and there's a link below to just all of the workshops that they're going to have, including the one that's upcoming here in August. I didn't realize it was Steve over there, right? That's your place.
Yes, it's my place.
Okay, that's awesome. And that's one of my dreams, is to be able to buy a place in a place that I can just go out and do photography all the time. I don't have to like drive 2 hours in rush hour to get there.
I should mention too that we are OM system ambassadors. We are kind of concentrating on computationals and now concentrating on this nature philosophy. But we do welcome anybody with other cameras. We do have some. We had a couple of spouses that attended, and the other partner had a different camera. For most of the things like landscape with Frank and, you know, birds with Steve, you know, a lot of the things, a camera is a camera. For the things that might require a computational technology that's very specific, we do have loaners that are available. So when Tom did light painting, that is something very unique. And so a camera was loaned for that particular session, but you can come with any system and just be willing to kind of, you know, explore nature. You don't have to necessarily come having an OM system camera.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, you had plenty of lenses and cameras there for everyone to have access to if they needed it. So, like I said, there are links below for the workshop, and also you guys were very gracious to give the viewers, my viewers here, a coupon for $50 off. So look for that. I think it's RobTrek 2025. It's all down below, as well as links to everyone's Instagram accounts. And I encourage everyone to check out the work that all of these awesome photographers have taken. Their photography is just epic. You know, it's it's really something, and it's going to be a real privilege to be able to work alongside with you at these workshops and retreats. So that said, I did want to sort of go back to uh, each of you individually and your thoughts on Kachu Fugetsu, uh, and ask you some more specific questions on the camera side or the gear side, and then we'll go to an open Q&A. But Frank, how do you? I mean, how does when I go out and take pictures of nature and things? Like I said, I approach it in a very systematic or methodical way, right? I'm looking for, like I want the horizon to be straight. I want to have balance. I want to have, depth. I think about all these compositional type rules, if you want to call it that. And I look at the lighting, but Kachu Fujitsu, I get the impression there's a little bit more. How do you feel like it differentiates itself from, say, like the general nature methodical approach to photography versus, the underlying intent of Katsu Fujitsu?
Great question, Rob. And it really comes down to, if I had to use one word to describe it, it's harmony. Harmony with nature, harmony in your environment, and harmony with your equipment, and ultimately connecting that with things you just mentioned, Rob, as far as understanding the rules of photography and applying it to that. But for myself, when I'm in an environment like that, the first thing I try to do as I'm walking about is just be cognizant of what's around me and not trying to force something. And I'm a strong advocate of curiosity and but acting on that curiosity. And that's one of the things that I strongly promote, when I'm doing a workshop or, even for myself is, all right, I wonder what was over there. Instead of just wondering, I'm going to take myself over there. So again, it all comes back to that harmony with the connection of all these things. And for myself, that is a very, very important part to this. And again, I have yielded results that if I didn't act on my curiosity, I know I would not have succeeded with the image that I was trying to obtain. But the other benefit then is pairing this with the equipment and the tools that I have. It just allows me to take that then to the very next step. And I look at different vantage points when I'm out and about photographing. The challenge we have in many respects is that when we're walking and moving about, we've been trained to kind of look straight ahead. But again, sometimes the image is right below our feet, or as you can see in the image here, it was looking straight up into the trees. And a lot of times, again, this is where I find the success is that it's not a conventional shot that we see at our in my case 6 foot plus height, and I'm stretching the boundaries. So for me, that's a real plus. But allowing some of the computational features to be introduced is really where I start to have an awful lot of fun with this. And you heard Lisa and others mention some of the high res componentry. I can now shoot a high res shot handheld, which in years past I didn't have that luxury, and I'm getting in some cases 50 megapixel imagery. But there are byproducts to that because of the way the sensor is stacking imagery. And so for water, it's a wonderful opportunity that I get to create kind of that milky effect as if it was a long exposure, but I'm actually just taking advantage of the process involved with the high res shooting. And again, these are some of the things that we're going to look at and learn and emphasize as we're out in the field. And the image that's up on the screen is a perfect example of that. The foreground water, there was a little bit of wind, but by utilizing the high res mode, I was able to mitigate that. And the other benefit, of course, when shooting high res is that my dynamic range increases, the fidelity increases, and it's a real wonderful tool. Lisa mentioned about using it with a long telephoto, and this is one that I use the 150 to 600. To do some landscape work. I'm on the other side of this lake that you see that's here, and again, a tool that I would have had to introduce physical filters and things like that to accomplish this in the past, but I'm no longer burdened with some of the extra steps that I might have had to carry with that. But in addition to, the high res, we have the internal live ND, which again, another amazing tool. And what you see now is an example of utilizing that. I've again, hand holding. I'm probably around a half a second shooting this. Found the composition and took advantage of utilizing the live ND part of it. And so again, I don't have to fiddle with trying to find the filters on that. It's right there. But in the last iteration that they came out with, there's a graduated ND, and that has been a real game changer for me. That really allowed me flexibility. One of the things that just to comment on the picture that's on the screen right now, I do what I call landscape macro photography, and you'll see a lot of amazing images from Chris in the bug arena. But I like to create macro opportunities with a macro. And in this particular case, I did introduce an LED light because I wanted to get the underside of that. And in some cases, I'll use a flashlight or even a cell phone to help illuminate it, but still being sensitive to the backgrounds that we have to work with. So again, it's again, Chris is going to talk about focus stacking and focus bracketing, but I'll also incorporate that into some of my shots when I'm doing my call it landscape macro work, if you will. And again, here's an example where I was with a group and I said, let's just see what we can find. And, all of a sudden we look and, here's this, for me, the main subject, of course, is the tree, but is it really the main subject, or is it the reflection that, we don't typically see a lot of times? And it's part of what I like to do is, again, that curiosity aspect is kind of exploring, look for scenarios like this. And on this shot, I don't recall if it was live ND or high res, but it was one of those features that it was able to get that nice effect within the water, and yet still handhold. I was reaching pretty far out on the little tiny peninsula where I was, and again, if I had to set up a tripod, it would be a challenge. But I don't want to minimize, the potential opportunities with a tripod, because a lot of what I do, and Lisa alluded to this, is I do what's called daytime live composite, where it's again measuring the light that comes into it, and for cloud painting, water movement in the middle of the day, but you need to have an ND filter on the lens in order to accomplish that. And again, we're going to spend some time, assuming there's conditions that are permittable for that, where we'll do some of that type of work. It'll blow your mind when you see the results of what you can do with a daytime live composite shot. It's just it's fun. The fact that the hard work is being done by Mother Nature, and we get to take advantage of that. But in that particular case, you absolutely do need to use a tripod, because we're going to be potentially doing 5 10-minute exposures, again, depending upon what the scenario is. So those are just some of the things. We're going to do some in-camera movement. We're going to be doing, as I said, the graduated neutral density, assuming we have the right elements in place, where we'll utilize that. And again, what a game changer for me on that in that regard, particularly for the landscape images. So that's a quick capsule of some of the things that we'll be endeavoring to capture while we're so.
Those are excellent examples of using the computational features in the camera to capture, things you wouldn't normally be able to capture without, some additional, effort. Uh, because the camera's always ready to go and do what you want it to do. And I think it's interesting how, the one of the advantages I think for high-res shot mode that you alluded to about, mimicking a long exposure, for example, with a waterfall, is you can use just about any shutter speed you want, like 1/1000th of a second in high-res shot mode, and you still get that effect. You don't have to
Absolutely.
slow the shutter down. And having live ND, just allows you to basically have, I'm sorry, not live in live comp gives you basically an unlimited bulb mode,
Yes,
which is just amazing. And then you don't have to stop with the camera. You can always put another ND filter on front if you want to,
that's correct.
and do even more and expand even more. And a couple of things I noticed in your picture, in addition to that using those features is also, like you said, the harmony and the composition and how these things just have this natural vibe to them, between the colors. Like you said, it's all about the harmony, and there's really a lot of, I'm just overanalyzing it maybe, but like the very first image that was shown with the looking up at the trees, I noticed, if you look down in the corners, there's kind of a zoom in there, kind of a motion blur of some kind, which is really interesting. I'm curious how you're going to do that or share that with us at the retreat.
Well,
Um,
that's some of the in-camera, intentional camera movement that we'll look at.
mhm.
And I got some fun results, when we were down in Alexandria. That hopefully we'll find some opportunities for that while we're there.
Yeah, yeah, and this kind of shot you can do almost anywhere, really.
Exactly.
If you're in the forest, that is.
Well,
But,
you could actually do this in a city with high rises, but I think it's prettier to see the trees.
yes, yes. So, gosh, yeah. Thank you, Frank. That was a beautiful. Um, I think, or a beautiful answer to Kachu Fujitsu and our cameras, and how these things come together. So I want to move to Steve because uh, we're all going to your place, and oops, where's the button? Here we go. I'm just taking everybody offline, not on purpose. Uh, okay. Oh, you're all right, Steve. So, you know, you nice. I'm not familiar with you personally. We haven't met, but I did look at your Instagram and the kind of photography and the travel that you've done. Uh, you've done a lot of traveling, but in your introduction, you talked about birds being sort of your favorite genre there. And I guess, uh, looking at my notes here, cho is the bird element of I can never get this right. Kachu Fugetsu. I was calling it Heinz ketchup for the longest time.
That works.
Uh, the chu element talks about the aspects of their behavior or their presence. How do you sort of align that with Kachu Fujitsu, and capturing that kind of element or that part of the philosophy of Kachu Fujitsu when you're doing your bird photography? Because Frank talked a little bit about the harmony with nature, but I think birding, maybe it's the same thing, or what say you?
Well, there are two of the computational features that really have brought bird photography to a new level. And one of the things that at least I'm always trying to accomplish in my images is getting something new, doing in a way, photographing a bird in a way that others haven't done. And the bird subject detection and then Pro Capture have given, they've added things to my toolkit that just allow me the freedom. And, I think the bottom line is that's where you want to be, is that you want to be able to utilize your cameras proficiently enough that you don't really need to think about it. You can concentrate on the subject at hand, on what's happening. Something I like to call depth of feeling. And I stole that. It's a quote, and I apologize for not knowing the author of the quote, but it says, good photography is about depth of feeling, not depth of field. And so that's something that I really like to work on. And to me, that fit in so well with the whole concept of what we're talking about here. And to use to be a little esoteric here, your inner self, your vision, to try to make the image that you see, as opposed to the image that you're looking at through the camera.
Wow. Steep, man. For me, I do a fair bit of birding myself, and as you said, the bird detect and the Pro Capture have been indispensable and have elevated my bird photography, where I felt it was, I could justify buying, say, the 300 millimeter f4. And never have I spent more on a lens than a camera body, until that lens.
Yeah.
But the camera and the features justified that, and I'm always going for a very basic composition and, just fill the frame. But moments like Lisa's sharing, or we're sharing here on these photos with these bluebirds and things, uh, these kind of things escape me sometimes. And sometimes I think it's just because maybe I'm not patient enough. I'm like, okay, if you're not going anywhere, I'm going to go somewhere else. If you're not doing anything, I'm going to move on. What role do you think patience plays in Kacho Fugetsu photography, or in what kind of moments or things would you wait for? And I guess this comes part of just knowing the subject itself, right? Doing that research beforehand. But
Exactly. The image previous to this one, the catbird with the bug in its mouth, there is a situation where you're sitting and maybe watching the catbird moving through the bushes, and you're hoping for something a little extra, something that's going to add a little bit more life, a little bit more behavior to the image. I come from a place where the theme is storytelling, and telling a story with a single image. And how do you do that? And the way you do that is by adding more layers, more components to the image. And a lot of times, you're not looking at the images where I sat for possibly hours in a photo blind, or in a situation where I didn't get anything. And I think being able to just be an observer of nature, and being able to appreciate that, and to say, yeah, I'm here to make images, but if it doesn't happen today, I'm here to experience, nature. I'm here to experience what I'm seeing. So these two young hairy woodpeckers, for instance, that they were on the branch, and they were, it would have been a perfectly nice portrait of the two young hairy woodpeckers. However, again, with these new computational features, specifically Pro Capture, where you're able to make images that in the past would have escaped you, that has been made a big difference, because now portraits of birds are wonderful. And certainly, all the other elements that come into play, light and specific moments and things like that. But now uh, you're really able to document life in a way that you really could. I mean, you could before if you were lucky, but now it's pretty much, if you're there and you're seeing and you're paying attention and you're making images, you can get some amazing things. Here, the hummingbird sticking his tongue out and one wing out.
Mm.
It's just you're able to get subtleties, you're able to get details that in the past were just so difficult. They would have been the exception, where now it's almost the norm.
Yeah, calling through images sometimes it's it's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
And, before you mentioned that I travel around the world and I do to exotic places all the time. But I always say that we all live in a destination. And one of the other things that something like Pro Capture has allowed me to do is to appreciate the subjects that I'm making images of in a whole new way, and seeing them through a whole new set of eyes.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, a good example is when I went to the last workshop and Lisa was pointing out things I never noticed before. And then when I got home and I was practicing, I was like, I got these in my backyard too. I had no idea. Just little things like these little leaves that look like hearts. I mean, and certain flowers that I would just mow down because, I had to cut the grass. I didn't care. But now I see these things. But anyhow, yeah, I think patience and, like you said, getting to know the subject, really, you can do these things now because the cameras do a lot of the heavy lifting for us on the technical side, and we can focus more on capturing that moment that we want to get, right? Um, I mean, like I said, I always fall back on the technical things about the camera, but I never take my viewers to that next step like we're trying to talk about today, is how do we get past the technical side and actually use it to capture moments like this. uh and that's why I'm so grateful you guys are willing to come in today and talk about these things, because it's not something I'm good at talking about. I can tell you, okay, how to go in a super control panel, set this, that, the other thing, but capturing the image and the moment and being able to get past that is really the end game for OM systems philosophy, right? Is what they're all about.
Mm.
Um, so let me ask you, Chris. Uh, I'm gonna make a leap here and say you're the youngest one here,
I don't
and
know. I might be.
No, it's me, Rob.
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure if it was me or Frank. So,
there's a couple of things. Let me hit you with sort of a more pragmatic kind of question,
sure.
because you introduced a lot of things at the last workshop that I never thought about that I thought were awesome. Uh, Particularly like, if we're going to get out there and go with this mindset and think about the philosophy of Kachu Fugetsu and be immersed in this nature, uh, how do you prepare yourself to be in there in that moment? How, if you could share with me some of the in a pragmatic way, like like you showed us some sleeves or something, and then you showed us some tools for holding things, for macro, all kinds of things. So if you could share with me some pragmatic things that you do or accessories that you use to help us be in the moment and be in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody knows that when you're going out to hopefully make some photos or find some things to shoot, you're going to need your camera and lens, maybe a flash, a diffuser for macro. There's your kind of basic tools that you need. But I think what Rob may be referring to is some of the things that maybe people don't think about so typically, and things that can really set you up for success. And um, I always have my backpack with me, but my backpack isn't just something to carry my extra lenses or other gear. I use my backpack as a support, right? So I have the Peak Design outdoor line, the new outdoor backpack, which is really durable, and I can throw it on the ground and I can lean on it. So I kind of use it as a tool, right? I also wear protective sleeves on my arms if I'm not wearing long sleeves for a few reasons. One, to protect from the sun. Two, to protect from ticks and plants like poison ivy and things, which I'm really susceptible to poison ivy or scratched by thorns. So I wear farmer's defense sleeves. If you ever seen these gardening sleeves, or like a UV protective shirt. Always wear long pants and high socks. Wearing knee pads. So just buying a $15 pair of knee pads from Amazon can really save your knees, and not just the comfort of saving your actual knees and the knees of your pant legs, but even though I'm very comfortable getting down on the ground and don't care if I get dirty, when I have the knee pads on, it's almost like I don't even think about it. I just pop down on the ground and you crawl around and then you get up and you're on your way. So um, those kind of things just make you more prepared to be part of the environment which you're shooting in. And then of course there's like bug spray and sunscreen in a hat, or all of those things, rather than just going out into nature in clothes that you don't want to get dirty or they're not comfortable with being for a long time, or things like that actually go a long way in letting you not worry about anything other than your photography. Because when the opportunity comes, you're comfortable and prepared, and you can take advantage of the opportunity in front of you.
Yeah, I think that's key is being comfortable, um, and not worrying about mosquitoes and things like that. So
And
yeah,
Rob,
that's
but you mentioned being comfortable. It's not just about what you're wearing and the gear that you have. I know that we talked about it when you were at the last workshop, and certainly something we'll cover in upcoming workshops is getting into comfortable positions um, based on how comfortable you physically can get. Everyone has a different comfort level and different physical limitations or abilities, and I try to recognize that. You joke that maybe I'm the youngest one here, maybe I can get into some positions, or I'm comfortable doing things that other people aren't as comfortable. But um, I never shoot with a tripod. None of my macro photos that you'll see have ever been made with a tripod. I'm shooting handheld, but getting stable, comfortable is a real key to making successful, sharp images. And I think that when you're with someone like myself or one of the other ambassadors that's leading, and you can see their field craft and you can see how they position themselves, and you can kind of explore different techniques of how to get stable and comfortable and get into position, that all really plays into the success of a shot more than just pointing your camera in the right direction at the right time.
yeah, yeah, that and yeah, you reminded me about how you were showing people different positions and standing and creating stability for your shots, which is critical. Um, the way you squatted down with your elbows like this. I mean, there's all kinds of things you did at the workshop that I can't demonstrate here, obviously, but uh, all these things help you get right in there and get the shot. And uh, you mentioned earlier that you didn't have, like, I guess, a baseline for macro photography before just before when you were getting started. But now that you're kind of all into this and you have these, Lisa's sharing some beautiful images that you have here. have you has this kind of photography kind of changed the way you think about nature or your perspective on, wildlife or bugs or whatever, before you got into this?
Yeah, a bit, and I think maybe even more so, I try to change other people's perspective. So one of the best compliments that I think I can get on my photo, on my photography, isn't necessarily, "Oh, that's a beautiful photo." Of course, we all want to hear that. Like we like hearing that people like our photos, but it's more. I always hated spiders until I started following you, and now I'll never kill another one, right? Or I never realized that these subjects that you photograph are right in my own backyard. And it's kind of bringing that awareness to it's back to the Kacho Fugetsu concept of we're part of nature, nature's part of us, and that harmony that Frank talked about. And I think that raising that awareness and allowing people, whether they're out photographing with us or they're just viewing our photos on social media, to kind of see more of the world that's around them and to take that closer look and maybe appreciate things in a different way. So for me personally, I think I kind of always appreciated these things. Of course, I get deeper into it the deeper I get into photography, but it's bringing other people into that world as well.
Mm, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's definitely got me into macro in a way I never thought I would. I mean, it was really, there was a spider crawling on the floor just the other day when I was in my other studio. And I looked at it, I said, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?"
There you go. Yep, it's happening.
You know, I didn't just freak out or, I mean, I
Grab a
don't freak
shoe.
out
Yeah,
generally, but, I was like, should I get my camera out and try to get a picture of this guy? And I was like, no, you know what? I'm just gonna let him just do his business and take care of all the little termites and other crap that they can kill in my house.
exactly.
Because spiders are a friend, really. They're very beneficial creatures in the end. Unlike this fly we're showing here. Uh, Beautiful
And actually,
nonetheless.
all of the photos that are being cycled through now are macro photos that I made at Steve's property at Little River, where the Kachi
Mm.
Fugetsu nature photography retreat is, and then I'll be part of a macro and close up, a dedicated macro and close up retreat a month later in September, also at Little River. And all of these photos are photos that I shot mostly while demonstrating to the attendees or just opportunities that came along as I was teaching those sessions. But these are kind of the idea of what you can expect to encounter at Little River, just a small sampling of it anyway, and the types of photos that I would be hopefully helping everyone to walk away with. And I think they are pretty representative of photos that last year's attendees did get. And one of the great things about being in that environment with the small groups, like Lisa mentioned, groups are probably 5, 6, 7 people per group, and we try to organize people by skill level and experience level, so we can all kind of be on the same page at the same time. But you get a lot of opportunity to shoot and ask questions and watch other people shoot and really work scenes and see things from angles or perspective that maybe you didn't think of before, not just because the individual instructors, all of us, are suggesting things, but you're watching other people shoot and you're looking over their shoulder, and at lunch you're talking to them and seeing what they got, and then you can go out and get it. So a lot of opportunity to learn a lot and grow really quickly.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is you were able, and not just you, but all of you were able to uh, take a little bit of time individually with people to kind of help them out directly, so that they could get the shot. Because like I said, everybody's at different skill levels, and some people just get it like that. So you have 2 or 3 people are just practicing and perfecting that technique, and another person's still kind of stuck, and you get a chance to walk over and say, "Okay, let's walk through this again," right? So it makes a big difference, having the way you have it all split up and being able to work with people individually, is great, with the small groups. So yeah, I didn't mean to pick on you about being the youngest one, but I know that it was when I started in photography is it that opened my eyes to the nature around us and just being able to find a whole new world in my own backyard. Uh, More recently, that jumping spider, that I took. Just I never took a picture of a jumping spider before because I
Oh, I
didn't
was
know how
so
to look
excited when
for
I
them.
saw that come across my feed that you got that, and I know that's your first of many.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing, and that would have never happened without you know working with you guys. So let me move on to Tom. Uh, Tom, I think you, I think you know. I'm sorry. It would sort of, I'd say, talking about practicing and doing things.
Mhm.
What would you say is one of the biggest challenges in trying to do this sort of philosophy of Kachu Fujitsu in photography? Because we live in such a modern world. And like I said, I get caught up in the technical details a lot of times. Sometimes, we have all these distractions, but what's kind of your take on like some of the challenges that people encounter and how we can overcome them?
I think it's an excellent question, Rob, and I think we get this from we're all successful adults, and people come into our workshops having succeeded in life, and they have raised families and they've done well financially, and now they have gear and they want to play, and all of a sudden it it's like a blank slate to them, and they may struggle with the idea of using the technology because they have a vision, and some of them are old school from film days, and it was pretty simple and straightforward. And nowadays you're using the technology to create what your mind's eye sees. And what's nice about the computational photography, like daylight live composite or live composite or um, you know, star trails and things like this, you get to see more than what your brain can process, and that is a really fun feature. So you get to experience life more. You get to experience things, and you get to ask questions. Well, what could I do to make this shell more interesting to look at, rather than just a straight shot where it's shooting at 1/25th of a second, at f/22, and you stop the water. But what happens if I want to light paint it? What happens if I want to, in the middle of a day and it's very bright, but I want to make this, lobster, Trey, can you go back to the screen? This lobster trap look interesting, you know? So how do I do that? Our Daylight Live composite can really enhance that photographic experience. And you bring everything you are, who you are as a person, to this workshop or this experience, which helps you define, what kind of picture you want, how do you want to compose it, and we're all there to help you kind of look at it and see it, and help you get that type of picture that maybe you're looking for. But in that journey and getting that picture, it might appear to be a struggle, but you're learning, and you're learning to perfect the craft, and you're learning to use the technology more and more in different experiences with some help, and then you get to experience. And as I say to a lot of people, just be brave, trip the shutter, don't worry about anything, you're not going to break it. Only I'll break it because I might drop a camera once in a while, so I wouldn't do that. But you bring humor, you bring yourself to this experience, so it helps you see and use the technology to create more and more artwork for yourself.
Yeah, and because that's one thing we all have in abundance is ourself, right? And
Yeah,
our own voice. And how do we bring that into our or how do we communicate that through our photography
yeah,
and use the features in our cameras to, give us access to those things like this image you're showing here with the clouds. There's there's so much there in the, this is a daytime live composite, I believe.
And
And
Mhm.
so we're not just capturing moments anymore. We're capturing, really a time, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And you're capturing the light, and you're seeing the light stretch, and you can see
yeah,
it stretch because of the clouds. The clouds are moving. Frank does this an awful lot, and sometimes you get the right sequence of clouds that appear to be coming at you, but I think they're going away from you to give that appearance. But you get to see more, and it's like if you're watching birds. When Steve does the birds, and you're looking through the viewfinder, you're seeing them move around a lot, and you get to see little minute movements that you can't see with your naked eye, and it can be a lot of fun. And same with doing things like this was using a combination of neutral density at one point, and then the live ND, with the polarizer, and I made it more into a black and white. But you can experiment, you can play, and I really encourage people just to play, be a kid, enjoy it, and like Frank does, to be curious. There's lots of little things we can do to enhance our photography, but daily life composite, light painting, things like that. This is a high res, it could be any dock, anywhere USA, but you can enjoy it. You can make it, abstract, you know.
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Um, let me uh, let me ask Lisa,
Mhm.
because she brought up a term I never heard of before. I always think about like wasabi with my sushi. But she said wabi sabi, and I was like, what the hell is that? But tell us what wabi sabi is, and how does this sort of influence your approach to maybe capturing, nature or wildlife, whatever it is, in the spirit of this Kachu Fugetsu.
So I think we strive for perfection within our images. Some people might be striving for that for themselves. Some people might strive for it to win a competition or to enter a contest or to have a gallery. But we're constantly looking for like perfection in ourselves, in our specimens, in our subjects. I see people pick up leaves, no good, no good, and wabi sabi is traditionally a Japanese art of imperfect beauty. It kind of is the concept that if you have a ceramic bowl and it cracks, they fix it by using gold to make it whole again, and therefore it's more worthy and more beautiful than it was before it was cracked. So that's kind of the traditional part of it. But now people have encompassed it into photography and even into kind of ways of living that, like, life just isn't perfect, and embrace it, go with it. So for photography, it basically means that because I saw this leaf and because I tripped the shutter when I saw this leaf, I made it monumental, right? It's nothing. It's a leaf on a beach. It's people walk past it all the time. But just the fact that we slow down as a photographer, that we frame it, compose it, we trip that shutter, it makes it something now that becomes perfect because we noticed it. It becomes monumental because we noticed it. So it gives you a chance to kind of slow down and just notice things. Notice, like you mentioned, the heart leaves. Notice that you might be walking by a fence on your way to the beach and you see this little face. And so you can see pareidoia in things. You might go out and say, at night we were photographing all of the bugs in Steve's garden. And then we come back in the morning and those bugs ate the coneflower. And that's terrible, right? The coneflower is what we wanted to photograph, but no, it made it into the Easter bunny. So, that imperfection made it more dramatic and, more worthy. We were walking along on the beach on a workshop that we did up in that area of Maine, and we were looking for heart rocks and different things. And I came across pink hat lady, right? She's got the eyes, the smile, but the seaweed is what made her. And it was this idea that when you slow down and notice things, so many things can be perfect. And yes, we all want to go to Yellowstone and have a double rainbow and an eagle flying overhead and the perfect light. but you have to be everywhere. You can't just be waiting for that one moment. We're in our backyard. Steve mentioned that's our destination. We're everywhere. We want to, on Sunday in our retreat and it rained, right? So our expectations are here, and we can either be disappointed or we can just learn to see subtle things and start to see pareidoia and wabi sabi and just start to kind of learn to embrace it more and more. And then everywhere there's subject matter. I mean, I want to go to the national park too, but if we get there and it's flooded in the road, we can't get in, Tom and I could go to the local dump and we'll get just as many pictures there as we would at the national park. So it gives you the opportunity to look for more subjects, but also everybody that is in photography is generally, we're lifelong learners. We want to go on workshops, we want to go to YouTube, we embracing things to learn, but then that also makes it really hard on ourselves. A few people that went to the macro retreat said, well, I didn't come away with hundreds of perfect images, but what they learned is how to fish and make their own perfect images out of that as well. So there's so much you can do with wabi sabi. Sometimes it involves computationals like focus stacking. Sometimes it just involves kind of slowing down and paying attention to something and finding the humor in, wait a minute, who's checking out who? Is, the lady beetle checking out me, or am I checking out the lady beetle? Or, all right, I'm on my way to photograph the birds and I'm booking through the woods, I'm booking through the boardwalk, but wait a minute, I got to stop and photograph the spider webs now, because when I come back through after the light kind of comes up, all these are going to not be there anymore. So you kind of makes you be in that moment more, which then again gets back to Kacho Fugetsu and kind of paying attention to things. Even if it's raining, you can find these subtle things and just start to kind of be in that moment with nature and just enjoying nature. And it just, it leads to some of the computationals like live composite, light painting, and daylight live composite, and focus stacking. There was a question in the chat of what's the difference between focus stacking and bracketing, and kind of when do you do what? Well, they both have their place. They both have their worthiness. Something like this, to me, a focus stack is in camera, it's done. It's not an ultra magnified insect, so I don't need tons of stacks in here. And I can basically see it in my camera, know it's done, and I don't have to then spend time at the computer post-processing. Other times you might want all of that detail and you need to be able to do 100 or 200 stacks, and you need that to get that detail in there. So they both kind of have their kind of worthiness that's in there. I think for me, when I discovered focus stacking, it was like my whole life, I was Goldilocks. And the image on the left was too soft, right? So there's the blue Himalayan poppy, and just that one leaf with the little hairs is in focus. And f2.8 was like, oh, this porridge is, just too cold. This chair is too hard, too soft. The bed is too soft. And then people say, well, stop down, go to f22. And then, oh, it's too hard. The background's awful. Yeah, the subject is great. And it was kind of like, how do I find that sweet spot for me? And then I discovered focus stacking, where I could have an f22 subject and an f2.8 background. And it was like, this works for wabi sabi. It works for insects. It works for flowers. It works for so many different subjects. And that myopic view of flowers that focus stacking gives us is what I see, right? I don't see all the stuff around the flower. If I'm photographing an insect, sometimes I want an environment, but generally I want to concentrate on the insect. And so focus stacking and thereby focus bracketing in those instances get you that subject as the main subject without having to worry about the background. The background just becomes that as the background. So it's really addictive. It's something that it's kind of harder for me to take a straight image now. I was walking around in my garden today. It was cold and overcast and not much wind. And it's hard for me to take a single image because I'm looking for things that have personalities. I'm looking for things that we plant things so that the background is kind of really unique and kind of pops out of there. So things that you'll learn, you'll apply them perhaps to the things that we teach you, but then you might also apply them to other things as you go on your path as well.
Lisa, I'm just going to interrupt real quick or add on to what you were just saying about that idea of getting addicted to focus stacking. And finding it hard to take just one image. I think that's something that will come up with several of us, certainly with myself, and I'm sure with you, in the workshop, like kind of organically through the session, is we'll talk a lot about focus stacking in camera, focus bracketing to stack later. And, I'm right there with you. I do a lot of bracketing and stacking, but we'll also talk about, answer the questions, explain why sometimes you do in-camera stacking, like was asked in the chat, why you would sometimes use in-camera bracketing, or sometimes you wouldn't do any at all.
Yep.
So, and why sometimes you can get sucked too far into that trap of always wanting to stack or bracket for stacking later. And sometimes you have to pull yourself out and just focus on those single shots and how to adjust your settings and look at the scene for that. So we certainly cover all of it. And if you haven't ever stacked or bracketed for stacking, I think that this is a really good opportunity to dive into all of it, but we're not abandoning single shots altogether.
No. And I think especially for insects that are moving fast, that becomes something that with the use of flash, we can kind of freeze that and be at a much higher aperture. And because the insect becomes the subject and the background, you don't have to worry as much as you would in a case like this flower here. So it can be subject matter dependent as well. So absolutely. And you're going to hear lots, as Chris said, of common themes between all of us, but you'll also hear some differences, and that's okay. We're not contradicting each other. We've all also found a little sweet spot with something. Chris does focus bracketing more than I do. Does that mean that one is better than the other? Like you said, sometimes a single shot is going to be perfect for that situation. Sometimes focus stacking is going to be what we need. And sometimes we absolutely have to go to that level of, we want that detail. We want to see all of those nuances of the antenna and the eyes of that insect. And only bracketing is going to give us that. Somebody did mention that they don't like flash. Most of the time when somebody mentions that, it means they haven't mastered flash yet. You'll see that we don't use flash that's ugly flash, and that's where most people have gotten frustrated with flash. What we're doing for insects is a very diffuse flash. Sometimes even for flowers, being able to do it that way. A lot of the images that you have seen herein have been used, flash was used with them. So I say probably you just haven't acquired the right taste for flash yet to be able to implement it in a way that you get that soft light from flash rather than the harshness that kind of come from using a flash either undiffused with a macro diffuser, not just any kind of diffuser.
I think it's a good, this workshop is a good opportunity for people to step out of their comfort zone, what they used to do, what they like to do, and to try new things. And of course, we're shooting digital, so the sky's the limit. You don't have to worry about, spending money on a bad picture. You learn instantaneously. You can evaluate. You can have somebody give you feedback. So you have a wonderful opportunity to, learn new techniques. I know for me, doing the computational and a little bit of light painting here and there, it might be a stretch for people to go from macro, birds, now light painting, because you get into different menus, parts of the camera, and that might be a little confusing. But that's the way we use the camera, and that's where you learn to navigate, parts of the camera based on your photographic subject.
Yeah, and like I said, the cameras are, like a Swiss Army knife. And sorry, I hope nobody can hear my dog. Let me, Lisa, I'm sorry. Let me move on to, we want to do an open Q&A with the viewers. If you have time and can stick around, that's great. If not, that's okay too. But I wanted to, if each of you, and we'll start with, we'll go back to Frank, maybe just give a little word of inspiration to our viewers and what your role will be at the retreat. And then while we're doing that, and I get my dog away from the window, we'll take some open Q&A from the viewers. I see a few already, some from Anthony and stuff. And then I have a few questions also. So I'm going to tune out just for about 30 seconds, and then Frank, you go.
All right. Well, and hopefully you'll find your dog, and that'll work out okay. So yeah, from an inspirational standpoint, one of the things that you heard me mention this early on is that I'm going to really focus a lot on the curiosity part. So when we're what's going to be fun for me is I've not been to Steve's place yet, and I'm very, very anxious. Not anxious is the right word, but I'm excited to be there. And what Steve has shared with me is it's a cornucopia of opportunities. So I'm excited about that. And again, part of the time that where I'll be involved with this is that we're going to be really taking advantage of that curiosity component, because I think what that does is it gives us an opportunity for more creativity in our photography, other than what again is right in front of us. So for me, that's going to be a real big part of it. And again, ultimately using these additional tools, how we can incorporate that into the fact that we're going to have this curiosity with it, and then turn that into the creative element of this. So I'm excited to meet many of you, and I'm really looking forward to it. So that's my quick synopsis on that aspect of it. And maybe since Rob is still chasing a dog, I think Steve, you were after me. Maybe I can just pass the baton on to you.
Sure. Well, I think as far as inspiring you to join us at the workshop, I think one of the things that we're going to be able to do as a group are to open you up to some of the tools that can make you more creative photographers and be able to express yourselves in ways that maybe you didn't think possible in the past. As far as the birds go, we're going to be working from photo blinds at feeding stations. And so, of course, we're not going to have bitterns in a marsh or ducks on a frozen pond or anything of that sort. But again, we'll give you the tools and for you to go out there. I've always thought that your very best teacher is going to be you being out there and practicing. And, our workshops, one of the beauties about the last workshop, the macro workshop we had last September, was that it really felt like we created a family of photographers. And I know that many of the participants have been in touch, not only with us, but with each other. And the learning continues. It's not that you're closed off. Emails go back and forth, an occasional phone call to ask a question, whatever. The camaraderie that we build and the ability to reach out to others, I think is also a wonderful, wonderful part of the workshops. So it really develops a community of fellow photographers. Yeah, and I think that learning about seeing things. I saw one of the comments in the chat was that photography or macro photography teaches you to see in a new way. And I hope that all of us will, no matter what area of nature photography we're going to be working with, will inspire you in that same way and to get you to look at things differently.
Steve, the only disappointment I have is I was expecting to see a whole flock of condors there. So that's not going to happen.
They were through today, so I'll have images of them next year.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to step away for a minute. I think let's go to Chris. And again, this is a good time in the chat section to start asking some questions, whether technical or philosophical, anything photography related, because we have an amazing talent here today with so much experience in photography that I'll never be able to do in any of my solo live streams. So please take advantage of that today. But Chris, any last words here of inspiration and your role for the workshop?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I would say, obviously, completely agree with everything Frank and Steve said so far. I don't want to be redundant, but absolutely agree with what they said. And if you haven't already been to anything up at Steve's place, both of these workshops are at Steve's place in Maine, and it's really kind of a little piece of paradise for outdoor photography. So really great. But for me in particular, I think that this setup that we've come up with 5 or 6 different instructors that are kind of teaching things that are adjacent to one another, but each slightly different and each in a slightly different way, is a really, really excellent opportunity to find your way through maybe genres or subgenres of photography and find your way through what resonates with you. And this structure actually reminds me of a question that was asked to me in a completely different context. I was a weightlifter and weightlifting coach for many years, and you get to a point with your athletes that you're coaching where they trust you and they think that you know best, which is really great as the coach, that your athletes believe in you and think that you're teaching them the right way. But then every once in a while, an Olympian comes through the area, or someone from another country's national team comes through the area, and they're going to run a clinic or a workshop. And my athletes would say, well, is it really worth me going to spend a couple $100 on this workshop and learn from someone? Aren't they just going to teach me the same things that you teach me? And I would always say, if you have the opportunity and you have the money and you have the time to go learn from this other person who's an expert in the field, absolutely go and do it, because they might tell you the exact same things that I do. They might tell you 90% of the same things that I tell you every day, but they might say that one or two things that resonate with you in a way that I would never say, because that's not how I would say it. But they say it in the way that sticks with you. And that could be what takes you from here to there in your progress. And I feel like it's the same thing with these workshops, because I say things a little differently than the way Lisa says them, and a little different than Tom or Frank or Steve or Emily or Eric. And it might just stick with you in a way, or you might like that technique better, or that works for you. And you're exposed to all of them at once, and you can kind of not necessarily emulate one of us or another one of us, but find exactly that formula that moves you forward.
Yeah, because we all connect in different ways. Our brains are all wired differently, and that's the beauty of working with so many of you at once. Is it's reinforced in ways that maybe we've never heard before, but also in ways that connect with us so that we remember it even better. So all of you are such fantastic educators and teachers, and you're able to draw on experience that very few people have. So that's why it's really like I've said many times, it's such a great privilege to know you and to work with you and have this opportunity. Um, and let me just go to Tom and Lisa here, or in any order there. Uh, just any words of inspiration and what your role will be during the workshop.
I'm going to work with people and inspire them on seeing and visualizing, the sky, the light painting flowers, maybe in the woods, or doing something, that is different than macro. It's close up, but you can use a flashlight, or we can go out and do some, cloud stacking, during the middle of the day if it warrants it. But I'm gonna, try to be as creative and inspire as much as possible.
Yes. Lisa?
I think it's a matter of like slowing down and noticing things. You mentioned like the walk into the meadows where we were a couple of weeks ago. Like people have a destination, they want to get to the birds and they don't necessarily pay attention. And like when we were with Frank and when we were walking and you and I were walking and like you see the hearts and you see things. So it allows you to kind of slow down and notice things. I know Chris probably hears that a lot in that people say, "Oh, there's no bugs where I am." I guarantee there are bugs. Chris even did a shoot on the top of a building in New York City and there were bugs. But people don't slow down and notice. They don't look underneath the leaf. And so they think there's no insects around and they're everywhere. They're definitely around. So whether it's wabi-sabi, whether it's using a computational, whether it's looking for a bug, all of it kind of involves what, Frank said of being curious and then that idea of kind of slowing down and noticing things as well. And people come away kind of changed as a result of that because it then affects all of the photography that you do thereafter.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely slowing down and looking at things and walking around with you, and like I said, being able to shoot over your shoulder definitely was a huge benefit and a great experience. Um, and let's go to I did have a few questions, and uh, we'll get to some in the chat here that I've seen or I want to expand on. And like what Chris was saying earlier about, from his weightlifting experience, which definitely explains how you can get down on your knees like that. Uh, it's a feature like Pro Capture, for example, is something that I've used in my portrait photography because a lot of times and you can imagine like in weddings and other places where the model or the person is going to be throwing something. You don't have to anticipate so much, as you used to. You can just be ready with the Pro Capture. You know it's about to happen, and you're definitely going to get that moment. So these features, being able to work with all different, photographers here lets you see how to use these features in different ways in different environments. And the focus here will be on nature, nature photography, uh, and there's several workshops. I know Chris is not going to be at the immediate one coming, but there's another one later. So if you can't make it to this one, they have several more coming up. Uh, and I always encourage people, instead of investing in gear, like I got a whole shelf but there's another shelf on the other side you can't see of just gear. And if I'd taken half of that and invested it into, uh, more educational and more experiences, I'd be a far better photographer than I am now. So, as far as other questions go, this one's sort of a technical one, I guess, on the back end with from Anthony about using DxO Pure Raw versus using the DxO Photolab 8. I don't know if any of you have experience with that. I'll give my 2 cents. Really, it's about the workflow. If you've been a long time Lightroom Adobe user and you use their cataloging system, and that's kind of the Achilles heel of Lightroom, then it's better to just get the Pure Raw and pre-process the images before you start editing in Lightroom. From my standpoint, I have to use both. I don't use the cataloging in Lightroom at all. But the Lightroom Photoshop package has some tools there that I have to use in other work like layering and things like that. And the workflow in that sense is unparalleled. Adobe's got that down. But if you're doing one image at a time and you can do some bulk editing, but for the most part, Photolab offers all of the tools and a workflow that I found very intuitive for my way of thinking and the way I'm wired with the control points and everything. But the end result ultimately will be the same, whether you process with Pure Raw, then edit in Lightroom, or if you start with Photolab and just process everything there. It's more about are there tools in the Adobe that you need outside of Photolab. For example, focus stacking, HDR, layering, exposure blending, all these things really you can only do, because Photoshop does a lot of heavy lifting in the editing world that just you can't find anywhere else. So that's my 2 cents. But I guess do any of you use any of the DxO products that can give some feedback to Anthony on his question there?
So
I use. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I use DxO Pure Raw when I need to. I find out of the noise reduction software, it really is the best noise reduction software for more like nature type images. Some other software removes noise, but they also make the picture softer. So Tom and I don't mind using really high ISOs. Sometimes we'll use high res mode because noise is random and your subject is your subject, so the pixels stay the same, and that will remove or reduce noise. But I love DxO Pura. I don't use the Photo Lab. I only use the DxO Pura.
And then you edit in Lightroom or some other editing software?
Okay. I'll edit in either Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw. I teach Photoshop for creative stuff, but for all of my nature things, like either develop module of Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw is usually sufficient for what I need. Now, you can select the subject and then select the background. So if you have a really dark eagle against a bright sky, you're exposing for the eagle. The sky isn't going to look in your picture like it looked in what you saw. So now that you have that ability to select the subject and edit the subject in the background or the subject in the sky separately, you can get back to kind of what you saw when you were there.
Right. Yeah, the AI subject detection is pretty good in Lightroom. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good and can help you in certain situations. Another one is if the lens doesn't support focus stacking, it will also not do focus stacking. So I guess Chris, you do this a lot. Sometimes you do in-camera focus stacking, sometimes you do not. I think that the reasons you do that would probably answer this question. Or if Mr. Patel wants to rephrase the question, because it's not quite clear. It looks like you're asking the same question twice. But
if it doesn't support focus stacking, maybe it doesn't do bracketing. Maybe the question, but I think I can answer in a way that'll probably cover it regardless. If you want to take advantage of the in-camera features on the OM system or even the older Olympus cameras that have in-camera focus stacking or focus bracketing capabilities, you do need a lens that is compatible with those features. And the compatible lenses are listed on OM System's website. If you were to just type into Google which OM System lenses are compatible with focus stacking, you would get right to it. The good news is the 30, 60, 90 macro lenses, which are lenses that you would typically want to focus stack with, they are compatible. Most of the pro lenses, so like the 12 to 40 or the 40 to 150 2.8, those lenses are compatible. So a lot of the pro lenses and of course the macro lenses are compatible with focus stacking in camera, but you will not be able to take advantage of the in-camera automated stacking and bracketing features with lenses that are not compatible. And the only reason I point out the automation portion of that is you can still focus stack without the in-camera focus stacking. You can still bracket. You just have to do it in another way. You can focus bracket or focus stack on cameras other than OM System that don't have these features at all. It's just you have to use some different techniques, meaning you have to use a focusing rail to adjust your focus point. You have to manually shift or move. So there's still ways to achieve the results, but I think what he's asking about is the automated features in camera, and you do need a compatible lens for that.
Yeah. So the in-camera stacking, you need a compatible lens. Focus bracketing, not necessarily. Most likely you can do that with any lens.
Yeah, if you want to use the automated version of bracketing, you would still need the compatible lens, but if you want to manually control it, you can use any lens.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah. Okay, and then I guess Flash has kind of come up a couple of times. There's some Junji Farms was talking about using diffusers for the natural light. But there are some distinct advantages of using flash. Uh, I guess, being able to shoot at lower ISOs is the main one and not worry about your shutter speed. But let me ask you, like, if you were to shoot natural light, uh, I guess specifically for macro close-up photography, what would you say? What would be your approach to something like that? Is it just cranking up the ISO until it gets there, or I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I can start to answer, and anyone else on that shoots a lot of macro can give your opinion. But for me, I almost never shoot macro without a flash, especially live subjects out in the wild, the live subjects that can move. And it is for what you just said, Rob, about keeping the ISO really low. I want to shoot at ISO 200 if I can. That's the native ISO for our cameras and gives the cleanest result. Also lets me shoot at slower shutter speeds, and it lets me control the light. I don't want to be at the mercy of where the sun is. I want to be able to put the light at the intensity and the direction that I want it to be from, to light up the details that are typically facing the camera that I'm photographing. So I understand that some people might not like the look that the flash creates. There's a lot you can do to mitigate that or manage that. But to me, the benefits far outweigh any negatives that I personally perceive. But if you don't want to, don't like to, or don't know how to use a flash, you can certainly use natural light, but you're going to be fighting against limited light or light that's coming from a less than ideal direction.
Yeah, because typically you want to be at like f8, 9, 11. With the
It's dark.
and yeah,
And
that really kills the light. And then I just had one more thing, Steve, and then
Sure.
with the flash, the diffuser that you were using, I forget what it's called, AK diffuser.
I use the Cygnus Tech diffuser, but the AK and the Cygnus Tech are both very similar shapes.
Yeah, but it's the shape of that diffuser that really makes this amazing catch light in the eyes. When you get close enough to see the eyes of spiders or bugs, the catch light is really, it's a night and day difference, really, in my opinion, and can make the image very, very unique versus, say, a natural light shot. But I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that I often will do macro photography and even focus stacking without a flash. The trick there is that you need to be up early, get out there when the bugs are cold and when they're not going to move. You have a lot more hit and miss type of situations, but often if you get out there first thing when there's even dew on the bugs and things of that sort, the light is naturally more diffused because it's low light. But I also will use a diffuser and a reflector to help control the light. But again, you need subjects that aren't going to move, that are still too cold to start walking around or flying off.
And if I could add to that, as you saw in that mushroom shot that Lisa put on the screen, my macro photography doesn't move, so I have the benefit of allowing a little more control. And when I'm doing that, I do use an artificial light, but it's a portable LED, and in some cases, I'll even do a flashlight. And if you would have noticed on that image that the bottom had a really nice cast to it, and depending upon the thickness of, like a mushroom, if I'm shooting that, I'll take a flashlight and take a series of shots. Now I am on a tripod when I'm doing this, and I'll flash the light through the mushroom and then blend it with another image in the same position. So it gives the illusion of almost as radiating from underneath. So there's a whole host of other types of trick. And again, in my world, I'm going to use the word landscape macro photography, there are different approaches to this. But Having said all that, after this workshop, I purchased the diffuser, so now you guys have me as part of the club. So thank you.
Yeah, and I that mushroom picture, I think just going back to the Kachu Fugetsu was a really good example of the harmony uh, in nature and getting that close and applying the light in a way that really brought out the complementary colors. I'm getting too analytical, but you had some greens and oranges in there, and you had just the right amount of depth of field, and the way the light was coming in it was a really awesome mushroom shot.
Well, thank you.
But okay, I see Lisa. I wanted to share an image here real quick. Looks like,
I know that fly.
yeah.
That's a shoe
So
fly.
these are a few of Chris's images from the last retreat that he had submitted. So I just wanted to put them up so people can see. We were kind of concentrating on Kacho Fugetsu. I assume all of these, Chris, were with flash, and you were mentioning the reflections. So I thought some of these could really show what the flash can do and what that reflection.
Yeah, this one's a really good example of that, Lisa. So Rob was talking about the catch lights in the eyes, and you can even zoom in on it if it helps people to see. I don't know if you have that capability where you are, Lisa, but
Yeah, I don't give them like an iris when they don't have one.
Yeah, exactly. So you see like a pupil and iris, but obviously the spiders don't have that same type of biology to their eyes or anatomy, I guess. But that's the shape. You see that kind of black dot. That's the shape of the lens itself, the circle. And then the white toward the top is the diffuser. So it's actually, providing an additional benefit beyond the lighting. It's the reflection as well, and kind of humanizes the subjects a little bit in that sense. And this is also a good example. Another question that comes up a lot is, what about a ring light? And a ring light can provide the light, but then the catch light from the ring light is actually a little strange looking. At least I think it's a little strange looking. A lot of other people do, that it creates a circle in spider's eyes and doesn't look as seemingly as natural.
Yeah, well, there's we have creative options basically between ring lights and diffusers or natural light. There's lots of different ways to do the same thing, but I thought it was important to point out the catch light. Again, giving us that like this is another good example. It really imagine a spider's eyes with just sort of a messy catch light, right? Because it would probably be like tree lines and things like that. And this makes it so much more distinct, the eyes in the spider. So, okay, well, that was awesome, guys, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your night this evening to be with our viewers and myself. Again, it's really a real privilege for us, and I thank you again. Check out the links below to their Instagram accounts for inspiration and ideas for Kachu Fugetsu, and just the amazing photography and depth of experience that you'll see in their photography and the places they've been. It's really very inspiring, and I can't emphasize that enough. And they're all amazing educators and photographers. So take the opportunity if you can. I'm going to try to be up there in Maine. It's a little, I have some logistic issues, but otherwise, I encourage everyone else to try and take advantage of investing in your photography in this way, because it's really will expand your photography more than any single piece of gear ever will. So, thanks again, everyone, for being here, my audience, and all of you. You guys are awesome, and I hope to see everyone again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Good to see everyone.